My name is Sarah Calloway. I am 34 years old. And the night my life split into two completely different versions of itself did not begin with an argument or a phone call or any of the dramatic moments people imagine when they think about the kind of story I am about to tell you. It began with a hospital room that had gone too quiet. I had driven there after a panicked message from a nurse. My sister had listed me as her emergency contact, which I would later understand was not an accident but a decision, expecting confusion, maybe a family crisis I would need to help untangle. Instead, I pushed open the door and found an empty bed, a bassinet positioned by the window, and a newborn baby blinking up at the fluorescent ceiling lights like she was waiting for someone to explain why she had already been left behind. There was a folded note on the side table. 4 words. "She is yours now." I read it twice because the first time did not fully reach me. My sister had walked out of that room within hours of giving birth. She had not called me. She had not asked. She had simply decided, somewhere between the delivery room and the parking lot, that this child was a responsibility she was handing to the only person she trusted enough to put on a form. Then my parents arrived. My father looked at the baby. My mother looked at the baby. Then they both looked at me. And my father said, with the particular calm of a man who had already closed a door in his mind, "You take her. She left her with you. That is your responsibility now." My mother nodded like this was the most reasonable thing anyone had said all evening. I remember standing there in that cold room, a social worker asking me questions, nurses moving in and out, and that tiny newborn beginning to cry, while my entire future rearranged itself in real time around a choice nobody had asked me to make. I did not know how to take a newborn home. I did not know what I was agreeing to. I did not know that this one moment would cost me my relationship, most of my savings, and almost 10 years later drag me into a courtroom where the very people who had handed me this child would accuse me of taking her from them. And when the judge opened the sealed folder I had prepared, the room changed so fast that even the opposing attorney looked like he had swallowed something cold. But before I tell you what was inside that folder, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now? And where in the world are you watching from? I want to know how far this story reaches tonight. I did not take Lily home the way people imagine it in stories, no soft music, no sudden certainty, no speech about love and sacrifice. There was a social worker who lent me a car seat from a cupboard near the nurse's station because I did not own one. There was a family court date scheduled within days because a baby could not simply be discharged into an unverified arrangement. There were forms I signed with a hand that would not stop shaking, and a temporary kinship guardianship that gave me just enough legal footing to keep her out of emergency foster placement. Then I drove to a 24-hour store before dawn, stood in the baby aisle in yesterday's clothes, and read formula labels like they were instructions for a task I had never trained for. My boyfriend at the time came over that morning. He looked around my apartment, the open bags, the portable crib I had not yet assembled, the newborn asleep on my couch wrapped in a hospital blanket, and went quiet in a way that told me everything before he spoke. He said he was sorry. He said he had not signed up for this. He packed the few things he kept at my apartment and left before sunset. That was the first of many losses that arrived wearing the face of clarity. The first week I barely slept. Lily woke every 2 to 3 hours and I tracked every feeding in a notebook because I was terrified of forgetting something important. I learned to burp her by watching a nurse do it once and copying the motion over my shoulder at 3 in the morning. I learned the difference between her hungry cry and her overtired cry and the particular sound she made when she simply wanted to know someone was close. My parents came by twice in that first month. Both times my mother found something to criticize about the apartment. Both times my father asked whether my sister had been in contact. Neither of them changed a diaper. Neither of them offered money. Neither of them stayed long enough to sit through a single feeding. By the end of that first brutal year, something had shifted in me that I had not expected and could not have planned for. I was not managing a crisis anymore. I was raising a child. The years that followed did not pass in dramatic highlights. They built the way real life builds, one ordinary day at a time, slowly and permanently. Lily grew into the center of my world so naturally that sometimes I forgot there had ever been a version of my life that did not include her. By the time she was 3, she had a favorite cereal, a favorite stuffed rabbit, and a stubborn little personality that could fill an entire room. She called me Mama from very early on. I never corrected her. I moved from classroom teaching into school counseling because the training helped me understand children who carried invisible pain. Lily was one of those children, even on her sunniest days. She panicked if I was 5 minutes late for pickup. She wanted to hear me moving around the kitchen before she could fall asleep at night. So I built our life around consistency. Friday evenings were frozen pizza and a film on the couch. Sunday mornings were pancakes and a walk wherever the weather allowed. Every birthday had the same chocolate cake from the same bakery. Every Christmas Eve we opened one book and one pair of pajamas. Small traditions became proof. I stay. I remember. You are safe here. My parents remained what they had always been, technically present and emotionally remote. They came for some holidays and skipped others. My mother brought gifts that showed how little she knew Lily. My father asked about school in the tone of someone making conversation at an appointment. They never once acknowledged what they had done in that hospital room or apologized for the years I had built alone. When Lily was 8, she found me sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by bills one evening and quietly pushed her piggy bank across the table toward me. I laughed and cried at the same time so hard I scared us both. That was the kind of child she was. The call came just after Lily turned 10, the year our home finally felt the most stable it had ever been. My sister's voice was on the other end of the line. A name I had not heard spoken aloud in years. She did not return broken or obviously desperate. She returned composed, healthy, carefully spoken. She said she had been sober for years. She said she had rebuilt her life and married a man named Marcus. She said she had hated herself every day for what she had done in that hospital room and had stayed away because she believed, for a long time, that staying away was the least harmful thing she could do. Against my better judgment, or maybe because of it, I believed enough of what she said to move carefully forward. I arranged a first meeting in a neutral setting with a child therapist I trusted. Lily knew in advance who this woman was. There were no surprises. Brooke brought a sketchbook and watercolor pens because she had somehow learned that Lily liked drawing, and that small specific detail softened me more than it should have. Marcus came too. He was polished and pleasant and said all the right things about being grateful for everything I had done. He praised my parenting. He made a point of saying they were not there to disrupt anything. It was that last sentence that made me watch him more carefully. For several months things stayed manageable. Brooke met Lily in supervised settings, then shorter daytime visits. She never pushed for the title of mother. She asked about school projects. She listened. Then Brooke and Marcus bought a house 12 minutes from ours. Then the language started shifting. Marcus began talking about school districts' instability and what every child deserved. Brooke started using a phrase, natural family structure, that she repeated in slightly different forms across multiple conversations, always while Marcus watched my face to see where I moved next. The night Marcus sat at my kitchen table eating takeout and casually mentioned that Lily would have her own bathroom at their house if things ever evolved, I finally understood what was actually happening. They were not re-entering her life. They were measuring it. The dinner invitation from my parents should have been the warning I needed. They rarely asked us over unless a holiday required the performance of togetherness. When my mother called to suggest a quiet Sunday meal, I almost declined. Lily had baked muffins and wanted to bring them to her grandfather. So I went. The second I stepped into their dining room and saw Brooke and Marcus already seated at the table like guests of honor, I knew I had made a mistake. My father cleared his throat halfway through dinner and announced, almost proudly, that he and my mother had maintained contact with Brooke for several years. He said it the way people reveal things they expect to be thanked for. My mother said Brooke had needed time to stabilize. Marcus said everyone had been trying to do what was best for Lily. Then my father leaned back in his chair and said the sentence that tore away whatever remained of the idea of family I had been holding on to. Blood matters, Sarah. You have done a good job. But she belongs with her real mother. Lily heard enough of that to understand the danger. On the drive home, she asked in a very small voice whether someone was going to try to make her live somewhere else. I promised her nobody was taking her anywhere. 3 weeks later, I was served with a custody petition. I hired an attorney, emptied what remained of my savings, and began building 10 years of documentation into a legal case. School forms. Medical records. Birthday photos dated year after year. Text messages from my father asking about Brooke while ignoring updates about Lily. Report cards. Therapy notes. The life I had lived as a mother became binders and folders and evidence. Then my attorney suggested a private investigator. He worked for 3 weeks before he came to my house after Lily was asleep and laid a thick envelope on my kitchen table. Marcus had been running searches for Lily's biological father for months before Brooke ever contacted me. Not curiosity. Paid database searches, asset tracing, genealogy records. That man had recently become the beneficiary of a significant family trust. Marcus was not searching for identity. He was searching for leverage. There was more. My parents had not merely stayed in contact with Brooke. They had helped her plan the timeline. There were emails discussing court language, reunification frameworks, and the right moment to file. My mother had written that once Brooke married well, I would have no moral ground to stand on. And there was a recording, obtained through someone who had decided he wanted no part of what he had witnessed, in which Marcus said, clearly and casually, that once they got Lily under Brooke legally, the financial conversation would move quickly. Not Sophie. Not my daughter. The girl. My attorney assembled everything into a sealed folder and submitted it to the court. In the hearing, I testified last. I told the court about the hospital room, the note, the 3 a.m. formula run, the decade of birthdays and school mornings and quiet Friday evenings on the couch. I said I was not asking the court to punish my sister for the worst choice she had ever made. I was asking it not to punish Lily for surviving it. Then the judge opened the folder. The room changed in stages. Interest. Confusion. Something close to disbelief. She looked up over the pages and asked, "Do they know you have this?" I said, "No, Your Honor." Across the room, Marcus leaned toward his attorney so quickly he knocked something off the table. Brooke looked from him to the judge and back again, and I could see the exact moment she understood that she had not been the only one keeping secrets in her marriage. The petition was denied. Lily came running into the hallway when she saw my face and understood before I said a word. She crashed into me so hard I nearly lost my balance. She said, "I knew you would not let them rewrite my life." We went home. We went back to Friday evenings and Sunday pancakes and the same chocolate cake on her birthday and the same book and pajamas every Christmas Eve. Lily still asks hard questions sometimes, about biology, about choice, about what forgiveness actually means. I answer them the way I always have. Honestly, at whatever level her age can hold. I tell her that family is not built from a shared last name or a DNA test or a courtroom argument. Family is built from responsibility, consistency, and love that stays when staying requires something real. I tell her that children are not second chances for adults who want to feel better about their past. They are human beings who deserve safety and truth from the people raising them. Lily once wrote in a school essay that the best kind of parent is the one who stays. I keep that paper in my desk drawer, right next to the court order. Because one document proved I had the legal right to raise her. But the other proved something the law could not give me, and no one could ever take away.